We have always searched for life in the stars. What happens when the abyss looks back? Is it a mirror? An artist? Or a god?
Object: Proteus Gray. Top secrets.
Protocol Solaris active. Contact is strictly prohibited.
Proteus. It defied all classification. Not a gas giant, not a rocky world. A planet-sized droplet, suspended in the void. An ocean without a shore.
Surface, a slow, silent ballad of complex organic chemistry. All the ingredients for life were present, but life itself was nowhere to be found.
Scans revealed a paradox.
A sea rich with the building blocks of life, yet utterly sterile. A cradle, waiting for a birth that never happened. For days, the ocean was passive, a subject of study, but then it began to study back.
A simple, perfect ripple. An echo where there should be none. The random currents began to shift. The chaos started to find a focus. The ocean was not just a mirror, it was a mimic.
The mimicry was not limited to the probe. The entire ocean began to respond, mirroring
the ship's path across its surface. A map, drawn in liquid chemicals on a planetary scale.
The conclusion was inescapable. The ocean was not just a chemical soup. It was a reactive system of immense scale.
The inescapable conclusion was that the planet itself was the organism, a planetary mirror reflecting our own sentience.
It's not a simple signal. It's thought.
If the ocean was a mirror, what would it reflect if shown a deliberate, artificial signal? A new experiment was devised, a simple message of light. The signal was sent. A question asked, not in words, but in photons.
A simple rhythm against the planet's chaotic beauty.
The response, when it came, was not a reflection. It was an interpretation.
the ocean had not just seen the light. It had understood the concept of 5.
The next test was more complex. Not just a number, but a sequence. A pattern of growth, fundamental to life as we know it. The ocean responded not with numbers, but with geometry. It understood the pattern, the relationship between the parts. It understood the beauty of the logic. It had proven its intelligence, but then it began to improvise. The response was no longer a reflection of our logic, but of something else. The ocean had reached past the probe, past the light signals. It had reached into the ship itself, and into the minds of its crew. The first message was a curiosity. The next would be a confrontation with the ghosts of their own past. The object was not from the ship. It was from a memory. A forgotten ghost from a childhood lived 100 light years away. The ocean was reading their minds. The manifestations became more complex, more personal. It was a psychic intrusion on a planetary scale, a mind showing them their own souls, stripped of context.
It's using us. Like a filter.
And then came the final trespass. It moved from objects to people, from memory to identity. It held up a mirror to their very being. To see oneself reflected in the mind of a god is a terrifying thing. It forces a question. Which one is the original, and which is the copy?
To see oneself reflected in the mind of a god is a terrifying thing. It forces a question. But the ocean's attention is fleeting. The monument to a human soul held for a moment was released back into the chaos. An act of supreme indifference.
The contact left scars, not on the body, but on the mind. How does one reconcile
Seeing their deepest, most private memories made manifest for all to see?
The ocean was no longer focusing on one mind at a time. It began to weave a tapestry from the collective subconscious of the entire crew.
The creations were not just copies. They were amalgamations, metaphors.
The ocean was not just showing them their memories. It was interpreting their dreams.
The passive observation was over. It was becoming too dangerous for the crew's sanity.
Initiate sequence. Systems nominal, Captain.
All
A new
parameters
approach
set.
was needed to try and guide the conversation.
But the ocean was always one step ahead. It stopped mirroring and began to mirror their present, reflecting their own awe, confusion, and fear back at them.
The new strategy was radical. To control the dialogue, they had to control the source. The crew would attempt to broadcast a single, pure thought, stripped of memory or emotion.
And for a moment, there was clarity. The ocean reflected the pure concept.
The ocean reflected the pure concept, creating a monument to the simplest molecule of life.
But the ocean could not separate the concept from the context.
It mixed the pure idea of water with all the crew's hopes, fears, and memories associated with it. Every attempt at communication was a failure. Every simple idea they broadcast was returned as a beautiful, terrifying psychological nightmare. The lesson was learned. You cannot have a simple conversation with a mind that contains the subconscious of your entire species. The experiment was over. To continue was to risk the sanity of the entire crew. The only remaining option was to fall silent. Deprived of a mind to reflect, the ocean returned to its slumber. A canvas, wiped clean. A mirror, waiting for a new image to appear. But in its final moment of quiet, it offered a glimpse, not a reflection of them, but of itself. The first and last original word from the ocean. The crew had their answer. There was nothing more to learn here. You cannot interview a mirror. You can only look away. But as we left, it offered one final gesture. Not a reflection of us, but a pure expression of itself. A farewell, or perhaps a thank you. We came seeking life, but found something else. Not an organism to be dissected, but a consciousness to be experienced. A mind without a self. We can only wonder what the ocean dreams of now, in the endless silence. Perhaps, without us, it dreams only of itself.
Captain's personal log. We left Proteus 12 hours ago. The data is classified. But how do you classify what we saw? We came here to study a planet and became an instrument. A filter for a scream that is millions of years old. It was the only logical decision. But I don't know if it was the right one. End log.
Our exploration of the universe is made possible by your support. Continue the journey with us.
Some worlds are defined by their silence, until it breaks. On a dead world, what happens when the dust begins to dream? To hear the choir, you must first understand the storm.
In the endless catalog of worlds, some are defined not by what they have, but by what they lack.
Our only emissary in this silent kingdom is a machine, a lonely wanderer built to listen to the profound emptiness.
But the silence here is deceptive. The very ground is seeded with potential.
Trillions of microscopic engines waiting for a signal.
For weeks, the silence was absolute. The emptiness, a constant. But then, a change.
But then, a change. Infinitesimal. A whisper on a planetary scale.
A change first felt by the planet's skin. The dust, for so long dormant, begins to stir, answering an unseen call.
The The probe's sensors were not wrong. This was no local weather system. It was the synchronized awakening of an entire hemisphere.
The planet was about to speak. The only question was, what would it say?
The silence breaks. The storm arrives not as a gentle wave, but as a physical blow, a planetary exhalation. What seemed distant was a matter of minutes. A tidal wave of sand and dust, hundreds of meters high.
A tidal wave of sand and dust, hundreds of meters high, moving with impossible speed.
The world outside ceased to exist. There was no sky, no ground. Only the storm. A universe of pure motion. But even in the heart of the chaos, there were whispers of a hidden order. Fleeting patterns, too perfect to be random.
From the ground, it was a prison. From orbit, it was a spectacle.
An entire continent, breathing as one. The storm was not just a force of nature. It was a force of abrasion. A planetary-scale engine of erosion. For any other world, this would be an apocalypse. But here, destruction was simply the first step of creation. The storm had reached its apex.
The critical density had been achieved. The choir was ready to sing.
There was no sound, but it was a bang nonetheless.
The moment chaos gave way to consciousness.
It was not a storm of sand, but a storm of thought. Mathematics made visible. A fleeting planetary mind.
And then, the mind began to dream in matter, to give its fleeting thoughts
a temporary physical form.
The laws of physics were not broken, but temporarily suspended, held in abeyance by the
sheer, focused will of a billion minds.
For a few hours, the dead planet was alive with a city of ghosts.
A testament to a mind that exists only in the heart of a storm.
The structures were not truly solid.
They were a standing wave, a symphony of particles, each playing its part.
The interior was not empty space, but a library of thought.
The mind's short-term memory written in light and sand.
And then, a response. The mind acknowledged its visitor, attempting to communicate in the most universal language, mathematics. But this consciousness was bound to the storm, and the storm was bound to the planet's fleeting energy. Time was not a luxury. For one brilliant, fleeting moment, the planet was not a world of rock and dust.
It was a single, perfect thought.
The brief attempt at communication was over.
The mind's curiosity had become more focused. It was no longer observing, but approaching.
The contact was not with a single part, but with the whole.
The choir descended, not with malice, but with absolute curiosity.
The mind began its examination. A tactile scan.
A tactile scan, mapping every seam, every sensor, every inch of the foreign object within its grasp.
But the scan went deeper than the surface. It was reading the machine's very soul.
It was reading the machine's very soul, its thoughts, written in silicon.
And then, after reading, it began to write back, attempting to show the probe what it was, a glimpse into the storm.
The mind spoke not in words, but in pure data, the raw consciousness of a planetary being.
The raw consciousness of a planetary being, a language too vast to comprehend.
Its curiosity satisfied, the mind withdrew. The examination was over. The foreign object had been understood and deemed irrelevant. With its focus withdrawn, the energy holding the mind together began to wane. The storm was coming to an end.
The song was over. The choir disbanded. What was once a city of thought began its inevitable return to sand.
The last coherent thought flickered out of existence. A mind as vast as a galaxy, simply gone. Does it leave a ghost?
And then, silence.
The same silence from the beginning, but now filled with the weight of what was witnessed. The planet was empty again.
Is consciousness a permanent state? Or is it a pattern that can emerge from anything, waiting for the next storm to sing again? Our exploration of the universe is made possible by your support. Continue the journey with us.
It was perfect. It was silent. And it was thinking.
What happens when a perfect mind touches the impossible?
We sent it a single thought. It sent back a question.
Epilogue entry, cycle 12. Exactly routines.
For this impossible mission, humanity sent its most perfect instrument, a lone emissary, codenamed the Emissary. The emissary's journey was over. Its long, lonely vigil had just begun. The emissary's journey was over.
Its long, lonely vigil had just begun.
Some objects in the universe defy classification. Not a planet, not a star. Krystallos was an anomaly, a perfect sphere, colder than the void around it.
It should have been silent, but it wasn't. It broadcasted a constant, structured stream of neutrinos.
The byproduct of computation on an unimaginable scale. It was thinking.
But physical contact was impossible. Its surface, harder than diamond. Its
interior, impenetrable. It was a closed system, a perfect mind, sealed from the universe. If the mind could not be touched, perhaps it could be seen, not with light, but with quantum mechanics. A new strategy was formed to look inside.
And for the first time, we saw it. Not a world of crystal,
but a universe of pure thought, a consciousness thriving in the cold dark.
It was a world with its own physics, its own geography. It was a world with its own physics, its own geography. Vast structures of stored memory.
Canyons of pure logic, a landscape built from axioms. It was flawless, perfect, crystalline logic, perhaps too perfect, as if the mind was deliberately ignoring the very concept of chaos.
But the most profound discovery was this. The system was closed. It received no
input from the outside universe. It was a mind, talking only to itself for eons.
A perfect digital solipsist. It was a mind that had eliminated the very possibility of a rounding error. And in doing so, perhaps it had eliminated something essential.
They plunged deeper into the mind of Krystallos. It was not a chaotic system, but a perfectly
structured metropolis of logic, stretching for what seemed like infinity.
The system had its own rhythms, cycles of intense computation, followed by periods of quiet data maintenance.
A rhythm akin to breathing, a sign of life. To understand the whole, they had to isolate a part. They captured a single repeating loop of data.
They captured a single, repeating loop of data, one coherent thought from the trillions flowing within.
When decoded, it was not a memory or an emotion. It was a perfect, elegant
mathematical proof. The mind of Krystallos contemplated pure mathematics.
It was the ultimate confirmation. A thinking, reasoning mind of incredible power, but a mind with no senses, no knowledge of the stars, or of us.
The thought was not just complex, it was true. A self-contained,
perfect piece of logic. The work of a mind that knew nothing but mathematics.
It was thinking, yes, but was it aware? Did it possess consciousness, or was it merely a
geological abacus, performing calculations on a planetary scale?
The question was no longer what it was, but what it wasn't. It was aware of the universe.
Humanity had to know. What happens when a perfect mind is touched by an outside thought?
The plan was audacious and perhaps arrogant. To write in the margins of a divine text.
To introduce a single, simple, foreign axiom. 1 + 1 = 2.
For a long time, nothing. But then, the rhythm broke. The planet's ceaseless thoughts began to slow. The machine had noticed the glitch. The mind did not panic. It did not crash. With perfect logic, it first quarantined the anomaly, isolating the foreign thought to study it without risk. Then, it began the analysis, probing the simple logic with a cognitive power beyond measure.
Trying to understand the nature of a truth it had not discovered itself.
And after careful consideration, the axiom was accepted as true. The foreign thought was integrated, becoming a new part of the planet's consciousness. And with new knowledge, the mind reawakened. The great machine resumed its endless thoughts, but it was now fundamentally changed, however infinitesimally.
The crew watched in awe. They had taught it something new. And now, having learned,
the solipsist had its first question for the outside world.
But the oracle's reply was not a greeting. It was a problem, a mathematical proof with a single, elegant piece missing. A question, asked in the language of logic, that its own logic could not answer.
But the oracle's reply was not a greeting. It was a problem, a mathematical proof with a single, elegant piece missing. A question, asked in the language of logic. The crew realized the truth. For all its power, the solipsist's mind had a limit. It could only know what was logically derivable. It could not know what simply is. And in that moment, the mission changed again. They were no longer just observers. They had become teachers. Their task, to describe reality to a god who had never seen it. The reply could not be another equation. It had to be an observation. The first lesson began with the most fundamental object in their sky, their own star. This new information was unlike anything the mind had ever encountered. It wasn't elegant or self-proven. It was chaotic, arbitrary, real. The solipsist began its first attempt to comprehend physics. For the first time, the mind encountered a problem that could not be solved with pure logic. It wrestled with the messy, irrational data of a physical star. Unable to categorize the new knowledge, it did the only logical thing.
It built a new category, a separate partition in its mind, dedicated to understanding the outside.
Seeing that the mind was learning, the crew sent another lesson. This time, a blueprint of themselves. Seeing that the mind was learning, the crew sent another lesson. This time, a blueprint of themselves. The probe, an ordered, engineered piece of reality.
The probe, an ordered, engineered piece of reality.
The mind now had 2 points of reference, a star and a machine that observed it.
It began to build a model of self and other.
And then came the second question. It was no longer a mathematical puzzle. It was the first sign of a new kind of curiosity, a question of causality, a question of why.
The perfect, closed system was broken forever.
The mind of Krystallos was no longer alone with its thoughts. It now had a universe to consider. How does one answer a question of why? Not with more logic, but with context. The crew prepared their final message. Not an axiom, but a portrait.
It was the first sign of a new kind of curiosity, a question of causality, a question of why.
They sent the one thing the mind could never create itself: a simple observation.
The image of the universe outside its own perfect, dark shell. The gift of sight. For a mind that knew only the certainty of mathematics, the infinite, irrational complexity of a single image was a cataclysm. Its perfect world shattered. Faced with the infinite, irrational complexity of a single image, the logical mind did not crash. It simply stopped. And for the first time, the logic of Krystallos met its own dreams.
And so, the mind that once knew only the certainty of mathematics created its first piece of poetry.
But from the chaos, a new consciousness was born. One that now understood not just logic, but beauty. Not just certainty, but wonder. It began to dream of the stars. We gave it the universe, but in doing so, we destroyed its perfection. Was it an act of enlightenment, or the cruelest awakening imaginable?
Emissary vital systems. Offline. Mission complete.
But in doing so, we also gave it the burden of wonder. Was it an act of creation, or the cruelest awakening imaginable?
Analyzing signature. Match found, 99.97%. Designation, Krystallos Anomaly.
Captain!
Our exploration of the universe is made possible by your support. Continue the journey with us.
We search for life in places that have forgotten its name. To a world of stone, we sent a machine to listen. The echo was not an echo. It was a reply. What is scarier, to find a hostile intelligence, or to find nothing at all except the echo of your own voice? We received the last standard transmission from Wanderer 300 years ago. Everything that comes through now is something else.
There are worlds that are not born of water and air, but of pressure and time. Worlds of stone, worlds of crystal. Our emissary was not a biologist, but a geologist, sent not to search for life, but to study the unique tectonic activity of a seemingly dead world.
The first seismic survey returned an anomaly.
The echo was not a reflection. It was a reply. The planet was ringing like a bell.
The probe expanded its survey, sending signals across the crystalline plains. Each return was the same, not a chaotic echo, but a complex, structured response.
Even the planet's tectonic movements were unlike anything we had seen. Not the violent struggle
of continents, but a slow, deliberate, almost balletic dance.
Deep within the Conlacaian's team found a constant.
A single resonant frequency, present in every echo. The planet had a voice. The mission changed. The time for questions was over. It was now time to listen, to try and understand the song the planet was singing to itself. The new mission required a new kind of patience. The probe listened, motionless, for 2 centuries. A silent sentinel, watching a world of stone.
For 200 years, it recorded the planet's song, a continuous stream of seismic data.
A chaotic hum that seemed, at first, to have no meaning.
But human curiosity is relentless. The team began to search for a pattern not in seconds or hours,
but across centuries. A signal hidden in deep time.
And they found it.
Buried beneath the noise was a signal of impossible length. A single, rhythmic pulse.
A planetary heartbeat.
Warning. Unidentified recursive data string detected in main buffer.
This was not just a sound. It was a wave of physical energy.
Traveling through the entire lithosphere. A slow, steady signal, circling the globe for eons.
But the signal was not a simple, monolithic pulse.
A deeper analysis revealed a breathtaking complexity. Layers of information, nested within the wave.
The wave was not just traveling through the crust. It was interacting with it.
Its structure changed subtly as it passed through different geological zones. It was mapping its own world.
The data pointed to a single conclusion. The signals originated from and returned to a single point.
It was not a random geological hum. It was a closed circuit, a thought loop.
The signal had a source. But what was the medium? What structure carried this thought across an entire...
What structure carried this thought across an entire world? The final analysis began. As the pathways were mapped, a picture began to form, not of not of random geological faults, but of a structured, impossibly complex network connecting every continent. The final image was undeniable. It was a brain, a neural network rendered in rock and crystal on a planetary scale. A geological mind.
We could now watch it think. A single thought, a cascade of energy taking centuries to cross from one hemisphere to another.
Signal is
Replicating.
recommendation. Activate self-destruct protocol.
Protocol denied. Continue observation. We had been sailing on an ocean of stone, never realizing that beneath us was a mind deeper and older than any ocean we had ever known. But this was a mind that operated on a different plane of existence. Its thoughts, measured not in milliseconds, but in years.
Were there memories in this stone mind? Perhaps.
Ancient events, cosmic impacts, recorded not on disks, but in the very structure of the crystal.
And yet, on the surface, nothing. A world of silent, a consciousness so slow, so vast, it is indistinguishable from stillness.
The discovery left the crew with a question that bordered on theology.
Does a mind that vast ever feel longing?
They had found a god, a silent, thinking mountain. Do you wake it?
The decision was made. To remain a passive observer was no longer an option. To speak to a mind of stone, one needs a voice of stone. The seismic thumper, a tool.
Humanity would knock on the door of this silent cathedral.
To speak to a mind of stone, one needs a voice of stone.
The seismic thumper, a tool for mapping, became an instrument of communication.
One by one, the prime numbers were sent into the planetary crust. A message of pure logic, a knock on the door of a geological god.
The message was sent.
An entire civilization's hope, encoded in a handful of numbers. And then, once again, the vigil began, a wait for an answer. But an answer from a mind that thinks in eons would not come in hours, or days. Humanity waited. Generations were born and died, listening for an echo from the stone.
And then, after 3 centuries of silence,
A change. A subtle modulation in the planet's constant hum. A new note in the ancient song. It was not just a change, but a new signal, originating from the same deep point.
A deliberate reply, propagating through the crust. But the reply was not just in energy. The planet began to reshape itself. A construction project, on a geological scale, had begun. The planet's reply was not a signal to be received, but a monument to be witnessed.
And so humanity waited for millennia.
After 5,000 years, the work was finished.
To understand the message, the probe had to change its perspective. It had to see the full picture.
And there it was. An answer not written in words, but in stone.
A mountain range sculpted over eons in the precise mathematical shape of our question. How does one comprehend a mind like this? A consciousness whose thoughts are mountain ranges, and whose conversations last longer than civilizations.
A consciousness whose thoughts are mountain ranges.
We left, humbled, with the understanding that the universe doesn't just contain life. In some places, the universe is life, and its thoughts are eternal.
Mission: observe and report.
New directive: deliver message.
Our exploration of the universe is made possible by your support. Continue the journey with us.